This is for the woman who is exhausted but still feels guilty when she rests. If you can be lying down completely drained and still hear the voice in your head saying you should be doing something, this life is for you. This is for the woman who is exhausted but still feels guilty when she rests. This is for the woman who finally sits down and immediately starts thinking about the laundry, the emails, the children, the messages, the things she forgot, the things she should have done, for the person she might disappoint. And you're not doing anything wrong, you're just tired. But the guilt makes rest feel unsafe. Today, I want to talk about the kind of guilt that does not always show up on your face. It shows up in tightness in your chest, as just 5 more minutes when you are already done, as saying yes when your whole body is begging for no, as snapping at someone, then feeling guilty for snapping too. And if this feels familiar, put yes in the comments. And please write in the comments hashtag live if you're listening to this live, or hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. Okay, so let's get to the points that I want to talk about today. And the first point is that guilt is not always a sign you did something wrong. Something a sign you have been trained to overdo. Okay, so we often treat guilt as a proof. If I feel guilty, I must be doing something wrong. But that is not always true. Sometimes guilt is not your conscious. Sometimes guilt is your conditioning. Sometimes guilt is the voice of years of being praised, or for being available, useful, strong, responsible, and easy to rely on. And when you finally stop, that old system inside you says, wait, are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to rest? Are you allowed to choose yourself? Are you allowed to not be needed for a moment? And this is why rest can feel so uncomfortable. Not because rest is wrong, but because overgiving became familiar. And I didn't grow up thinking rest was wrong. I did grow up believing that being good meant being available, doing things, helping, caring, showing up. And slowly, my needs became something that could wait. So, guilt is not always a proof that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it is proof that you were taught to abandon yourself. And write in the comments guilt if you have ever felt bad for needing something very human, like rest, quiet space. And here we're coming to the second point, and this is that quiet guilt creates a self-betrayal trap. When you keep overriding your needs, the guilt does not disappear; it multiplies. The problem is that when you feel guilty for having needs, you start betraying those needs. You say yes when your body says no. You stay up late, finishing one more thing. You answer the message when you need silence. You keep pushing when your body is begging you to stop. And then, because you are depleted, you become irritated. You snap, you withdraw, you feel resentful, you feel numb. And then what happens? More guilt. You feel guilty for needing rest. Then you override the need. Then you become exhausted. Then you snap. Then you feel guilty for snapping. And that is the loop. I remember having a fever, sleeping maybe 3 hours, taking care of children all day, and still thinking, if I just push a little longer, if I just do one more thing, because I knew that once I let myself rest, I might not be able to get back up. And one evening, I've opened the fridge and could not remember what I was looking for. I just stood there, empty. It was not dramatic, but it was really eyes opening. I was not tired because I was weak. I was tired because I have been negotiating with exhaustion for too long. And here is the third point. You do not need permission to rest. And this is something I had to learn. The shift begins when you stop justifying every need you have. There is this simple story about a woman I would like to share with you carrying a heavy jug of water across a field every day. And someone asks her, "Why don't you put the jug down and rest?" And she says, "Because no one told me I could." And I think so many women are waiting for permission, permission to rest, permission to not answer immediately, permission to need space, permission to be tired, permission to not be productive every freaking second, permission to not be superhuman. But here is something I need you to really hear. You are allowed to rest before everything is done. You are allowed to have needs before you collapse. You are allowed to stop before your body forces you to stop. And what helped me was seeing that guilt is a thought, a loud thought sometimes, a familiar thought, a thought dressed in urgency, but still a thought. And if this is a thought, I can notice it, I can let it move. I do not have to obey it every time. And guilt is a thought dressed in an urgency. Please remember that, and remember that every time that thought will appear. I let the dishes wait now, and I let the messages pile up. I let myself nap. Not because everything was done or is done, but because I am done and nothing fell apart. Please comment rest if you are ready to stop waiting for permission to be human, to rest. I want you to try something today. When the guilt says you should be doing something, pause for one breath and ask, is the guilt telling me the truth, or is it repeating an old rule, an old habit? And then place one hand on your chest and say, I'm allowed to need what I need. And that is enough for today. Okay. So before we close, I want you to leave you with this question. What would change if you stopped asking for permission to feel peace? If you are exhausted from proving, carrying, achieving, and doing so much more for everyone else, but still feeling like it's never enough. I have a free resource that can help you look at what may really be underneath that feeling. And if you're afraid of being judged when you choose yourself, afraid someone will think you are selfish, you are too much, you're lazy, wrong, or not enough, also have a gentle $7 course that helps you start releasing fear of judgment and shame. I'll put both links in the comments below. And if this conversation felt something your nervous system needed today, subscribe because I'm going live for 30 days. We are talking about confidence, self trust, emotional safety, overgiving, perfectionism, guilt, and coming home to yourself. And for today, I want you to remember this. You do not have to earn rest. You are allowed to stop before everything is done. You are allowed to be human. Thank you for being here and come home to yourself.